Okay, well, I am Brett Garner, grandson of Grandpa and Grandpa Groberg, and I'm the son of Jane. Um, and I'm going to be asking him a couple questions. So, a couple questions I have for you guys. First one that I've kind of been curious about is, did you guys have any childhood friends growing up? Like things that you really liked to do as a kid growing up? I don't know if I've heard much about your guys' childhood. I've heard a lot of mission stories and things like that.
Um, yeah, we had, in my growing up, we lived for a while on 10th Street in Idaho Falls. But when I started, probably second grade or third grade, we moved to 12th Street, and I lived there all the rest of my growing up. We had a lot of good friends. I had two particularly close friends in junior high and high school, Keith Hart and John Anderson, who both lived within just a block or two. And I mean, I had other friends too, but those two we really hung out.
Yeah.
You know, did a lot of things
What were some
together.
things you guys like to do?
Yeah, that was we went to the east side, I mean, the elementary school and the Oeyville Junior High School and the Idaho Falls High School, so we were all together all of those years.
Well, my best friend growing up all the time was my sister, Marilyn, who's just 20 months older than I. She was very good and patient with me most of the time to let me tag along with her and her friends. But we were very close. Then we had kind of a third really good friend who was the daughter of our parents' best friends, Helen Bauer. In fact, that picture right there, I don't, does it show up, the picture of the three
Yeah,
girls?
it's pretty small in the
From a
background, but it
distance?
does show
We
up.
should bring it up closer, maybe.
Yeah, grab that.
Which one?
And the little black frame.
The black and white
This
one there.
Okay.
Yeah, this is my sister Marilyn, and this is myself, and this is our friend Helen. And this picture was taken, Mother took it with just a little box camera that they had in those early days. This is in the home in Payson, which is the home I was born in. And she said it was just a really bright, sunny day that particular day, and she put us all in this little rocking chair and took the picture, and it turned out really well considering, you know, in those days they didn't have flashes and very fancy cameras. And it's been a favorite picture because we kind of grew up in the Three Musketeers type things, just really close. In fact, Helen's family moved to California. Her dad got a job down there, and the end of the Depression, that you couldn't really make a living for a family very much in Payson where we were. Daddy was farming, but that doesn't bring in much income. So we went to visit them the summer after I finished kindergarten. We went down to Southern California to visit the Bauer family, and I'll always remember that trip. We drove down in our old car, and we got there late at night, and Helen had already gone to bed, and my sister Marilyn and I been so anxious to see our friend again. And so when we got there, her mom woke her up and brought her out, and she just sat on a green footstool. And she was so tired, she and her little brother, and she didn't quite recognize who we were, and we were so disappointed because we traveled all that way.
Yeah.
But the next day she was happy, and we remained friends. In fact, she was a roommate at BYU.
Oh, cool.
That's great.
Brett,
I should,
You can just
bring it close to the camera real
Oh,
quick.
okay.
Sorry.
Tell me higher or lower, right there.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Okay, yeah.
I should say also that, you know, we did a lot of things with my brothers too, but it wasn't quite the same as your friends
Yeah.
and brothers and sisters. Okay.
I guess another question, did you guys have any, like, childhood dreams, like you want to be a firefighter, or you guys want to be a policeman, or anything like that?
I'm trying to
I
think
remember.
of.
I mean, it's that just kind of came
Yeah.
to my mind
Yeah.
not long ago, but
That's a good question. I'm sure I had them, but nothing consistent
Yeah.
that
Okay.
I remember at this point. I do remember, again, my friend Helen's mother her name was Edith. And after we moved to California, we followed them around from Glendale to Burbank to North Hollywood. I remember being in their home in North Hollywood when I was just a young primary age girl, and Edith was the primary chorister in the ward. And I just loved that, and I thought, that's what I want to be in, church calling when I
Yeah.
grow up, was a primary chorister.
Okay.
Never had the
No,
calling,
never,
but.
no.
I don't recall of anything specific other than, of course, my years from about 6 to 12 or so were the years of World War II. And I remember I'd like to be a fighter pilot
Yeah.
or something, and go out and help win the war and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Oh, well, that actually was one of my other questions. I don't know if I've always wanted to ask you guys, like, if you guys, I just worded it really good. I'm trying to think. Just like what you remember and thoughts and feelings you had during World War II. I know you guys were both pretty young, but like things like that, or if you had fears for the future, or what your thoughts and feelings were going through that.
As I say, we had a big tree in the backyard that we would climb up in, and someone would be the pilot, and someone would be the bombardier, and someone would be the gunner, and so forth. And we would, in those days, they showed little clips of war scenes and movies, and it was a big deal. They had lots of things, and you felt very patriotic. I also remember kind of one time of being a little, not exactly disappointed, but kind of, that isn't quite, because the movie little clips were made to have you really not like the enemy and so forth, and they had a German prisoner of war camp near Idaho Falls, and I remember one time being with my dad, and we went out, and they had all these German prisoners. They'd been out working in the fields or something, and they were just coming back. And I remember looking at them and saying, "Oh, those are just regular kids, they're not, they don't look very mean or anything." And I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but it was just kind of that's different than what I had been sort of taught.
Well, my experience was a little different because we moved down following the Bauer family to California, and my dad got a job at Lockheed Aircraft. So we were quite involved in that way, and because they were at that time building the planes. And in fact, our first year in California, we lived in a little apartment in Glendale, and then after Daddy had been working, they saved up money and bought a little house in Burbank, closer to Lockheed. It's located there. And we had only been in the house for 6 or 7 months, and they put up a lot of camouflage things. Smudge pots right on the curb in front of our house. A smudge pot was, in case if enemy planes came in, they would burn these and just put a bunch of smoke so they couldn't see where houses and buildings were. And at Lockheed, I remember driving to see where Daddy worked, and they had huge wire netting covered with camo stuff and brushy things and stuff to cover where they were making the airplanes, so
Yeah.
it just looked like a wild field or something.
That's
And then we had practice air raids. And they would blow a whistle, some kind of a siren that you could hear all over the town. And you had to go in, you had to pull down your black shades, you had that black shades on your windows, and turn all the lights off and
Yeah.
hide out, so to speak. And then at school, if they had a practice air raid at school, we had to get under our desks or go in a certain hallway, depending on the building situation, where the kids would be gathered in case
Yeah.
if there was an explosion nearby. So it was a very real thing in
Yeah.
my growing up.
Yeah.
And in the 3rd grade, our teacher taught us how to knit. Everyone knit, and we knit little 4x4 squares that someone would sew into an afghan for the soldiers.
Oh, cool.
And that's where I learned a great love of knitting.
Yeah.
And we even had contests, see who could knit the most squares in the quickest amount of time. And there was a boy in our class that was by far the best, fastest knitter.
Oh, that's cool. So were you guys ever scared, or were you guys kind of young and didn't really fully understand the immensity of it all, or? I don't know. If I were there, I would imagine I'd be really scared, but I mean.
I don't
I'm
think I ever
trying to
felt
say-
fear. I always
Yeah.
felt like we were winning and
Mhm.
we were going to win,
Yeah.
and just kind of angry that they were doing what they
Yeah.
were doing.
Okay.
But no, I don't recall of. I remember when the war. See, officially it wasn't until '41, but Germany bombed Poland in about, I don't know, 40 maybe or something like, so I would have been about 6 years old. And it wasn't necessarily a feeling of scariness, but I remember being under the covers at night, and when they started, the boys and newspaper boys were yelling, "Waxter, Waxter, war in Europe. German planes are bombing Poland." And it was just kind of a little bit of an eerie,
Yeah.
what's going on kind
Yeah.
of.
Well, I had a feeling of, I guess you'd say pride, that my dad was helping to build the
Yeah.
airplanes. And he would sometimes bring the work home. He worked building cables,
Mhm.
part of what he did. And he would bring cables home that needed to be
Braided or something.
woven or some way together. They braided them together around the pulleys and different things.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to watch him do that.
Yeah.
Another thing I remember was being just outside, and you'd hear the planes coming over and looking up, and the P-38s. Do you know what a P-38 looks
I
like?
should know.
Oh, do you, Tom?
Yeah.
They had the double fuselage,
Okay.
so it was, and they were the fast fighting,
Okay.
you know. It would be like when we see Blue Angels
Yeah.
going over now. But they would usually fly in little formations, and they just go so fast.
Yeah.
And that you could tell the double-tailed fuselage plane. It was exciting to watch that.
Try to think.
Okay,
Is
hold
that-
on.